Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we've got an NBA Best Bets video up right now for you guys. Also going to be looking at play props here on this Wednesday slate, so make sure to follow along, subscribe to that page, and check out both videos each and every weekday this season. Also want you to head to thelines.com and use everything we have up on the site right now, including that prop finder tool that's under the NBA tab. Make sure you're getting the best juice back on all of these bets that you are making in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first best bet on this 8-game slate. We're definitely at the end of March here. I will say we've got a bunch of stuff on the injury report here, a couple big spreads, but we definitely got some good value that we found.
Every spread is big. It's all plus 10s here, including Philly at Phoenix, but I was targeting the over here, and as I'm researching it, other people have bet it. It's gone up to 222.5, just a couple points, but I think still in a playable spot. I mean, the Sixers have really been low scoring, but you look at the last 8, they've played nothing but either elite defensive teams or gross muck it up teams like Charlotte, Memphis. And they haven't had Tyrese Maxey for a lot of it, and then he was getting his win back for some of it. Their last 2 roadies with Maxey, I mean, they were just short of the over in Milwaukee, obviously way short against the Knicks. Their prior 6 road games with Tyrese Maxey active averaged 239. They scored 118, gave up about 121. We know their defensive issues without Joel Embiid. Their offensive issues with B-Ball Paul playing more. So they have been forced to kind of go a little small, a little more often, play more Mo Bamba, where their defense is more vulnerable. And I mean, now we're going to Phoenix. It is a cross-conference matchup where it has been kind of a thing where when the Sixers either go out west or just are playing a West Coast team, it's different. It's not this muck it up slow style, right? So 220 plus in 10 of their last 12 against the West. The exceptions are what you would expect, like the absolute best defensive teams, New Orleans and Denver. Suns are just meh defensively right now. They're just meh all over the place, aren't they? I mean, just like about 15th in every category. Actually, post All-Star break, they are the worst 3-point defense. Second worst next to Utah in terms of makes, but allowing the most 3-point attempts. They also are forcing the fewest turnovers and have one of the lowest foul rates. So indicating just kind of a lack of effort, just kind of going through the motions defensively because they know they can outscore you for the most part. And now they have a little bit of extra rest, right? Haven't played since Sunday. After losing to the Giannis-less Bucks, which is a little bit of a wake-up call, giving up 140 there. And they have their big 3, which has been, the case only 24 games this year. But when they're out there, I mean, there's some lineups that are flashing some great offensive numbers, including with Royce O'Neal in there. They have a 122 offensive rating with those guys, 105 pace. You replace Royce with Nurkic and Allen, and it's a 123 defensive rating, so issues there. Those are their 3 most often lineups since the All-Star break is Royce replacing one of those guys. And when they've at least had Bradley Beal active, 220 plus in 15 of their last 16 games. Again, the exception is Charlotte, a team that will slow it down and muck it up. So I think we're going to be around 220 here at least. I mean, the Suns, they pretty much average 233 when they're in this spot in terms of 2 days rest. They average like 232 in general on the season. So I think there's a little bit of value here.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. That the only point I would add to you to your point to support it is Tobias Harris is questionable. That's really good for Philly.
Yeah,
Toby has been a problem, and not in the way that the kids mean it when they say, yo, he's a problem. I mean more like he's a problem for the team that he's on, not the team he's facing. And if you look at the last, basically, let's say 30 games, you can take whatever sample size you want without Joel Embiid this season, where you've got Tyrese Maxey and Toby Harris as the main 2 dudes in there. And they've got 5 points more per game without Tobias Harris. They've got an offensive rating that's about 4 points per 100 better. Actually, I'm sorry, 6 points per 100 better because they're playing so slowly without Tobias Harris. And so I think that only adds to everything here. He is a plus defender when you get a versatile matchup, a guy that's versatile on the other side of the ball for him. And so, obviously playing this Phoenix team, that's what they're full of. Like, they could use him on defense, I will say that, and they are better without him on offense. So probably a net positive for the total points that you're going to get here from Philly, and it's only going to add to it. Like if Philly gets to the like 210, 211, then we're great with it, right? Because I don't think we expect Phoenix to get below about 110 to 115 in this one. So that all chalks up to me for sure. Let me move on to that game that's a little bit disappointing because we will not have Giannis Antetokounmpo, but it's not disappointing for betting purposes because I still love this Boston team total, and I'm taking over 116.5 in that one. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that these Bucks and Celtics totals were at like 242, right? And so now we get this thing all the way down. I still think Boston is ripe to be the one to score because I don't know how much Milwaukee's going to come along for the ride without Giannis in terms of scoring these points. That's why I just went with the 116.5. Still pretty good value on that. And you might even be able to get it as this total dropped a little bit with Giannis out. You probably get it a little bit better number than the one I already played. But this is Boston at home, and Boston at home on the season is going to be putting up 120. Since basically February 1st at home, they're 9-1. They haven't lost since they lost that one to LA. I believe that was right before the break, the All-Star break, right? And that was a nasty game, like 103 something that they lost to that Lakers squad. That's not going to be the case here. Whatever we thought about Milwaukee on defense, they've come crashing back down to earth. To finish the point about Boston, 127 points per game with the 130 offensive rating. That's absurd. 130 offensive rating over 10 games in any sample size is pretty absurd. And they're doing that at home in their last 10 since February started. Like I said, it's all about threes, right? They're first in 3-pointers made. They're third in 3-point percentage. They're first in the percentage of their field goals that they shoot from deep. That's going to always be the case with this team right now. But also, I will say they're also attacking the rim, maybe not with the same frequency as some other teams. They're still in the bottom 10 in terms of like rim frequency, but they are like number 2 in rim field goal percentage. When they get there, they're very efficient because you have to close out on all their shooters. So that makes total sense as well. Milwaukee back down to the 3rd worst defensive rating since March began. That is with the 5th worst defensive effective field goal percentage. So they're just giving it up all over the floor to the opposition. And that effective field goal percentage being so high also indicates that those threes are going in against them, which is the case as they are one of the worst 3-point defenses in the league since that time frame as well. And also the 3rd worst defensive field goal percentage inside of 5 feet, right at the rim, which is really intriguing when you consider that they've had Giannis for the majority of these games and Brook Lopez plays that drop defense. But whatever sort of transition defense that they sort of materialized for them when Doc came there, whatever, I guess like gusto that was injected into the team when Doc got there after a couple of weeks on defense, it doesn't really feel like that's the case anymore. And without Giannis this season, they played 4 games. It all makes sense, right? They have 6 fewer rebounds and about 7 fewer free throw attempts per game. So everything down low gets worse for them. Plus they're at about 18 threes per game in that time frame. So they just take on the sort of personality of their new best player when Giannis is not on the floor, which is Dame. And that's going to be a lot of what you see is Dame shooting, Malik Beasley shooting, Pat Connaughton shooting, probably some Brook Lopez as well on offense, probably trying to pull Kristaps from down low. So those are some things to bank on. But if they're not just hitting like a barrage of threes at like a 45% clip, I don't know how they keep this thing close. Either way, I don't think Boston's going to stop scoring from start to finish, even if they get some reserves in there. Those dudes have clearly shown they can score like the Pritchards and Sam Hausers. So there's just going to be points coming from start to finish for Boston.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fade this Boston offense, especially against a team that's been bottom 5 3-point defense since the All-Star break and is now missing a perennial defensive first team candidate in Giannis. So got to like the over a little bit more in general here. I don't know. I mean, I was all lining up the Bucks to cover 8.5 with Giannis. I thought he was going to return. Now it's 10.5. I mean, it's risky, but I would still lean that way more than Boston to cover here. 3rd and 4 nights for Boston. Jaylen Brown could sit after he carried the load on Monday. Hauser's questionable. We'll see with Tatum and Jrue coming back. I mean, and Dame's been playing really well lately, offensively, right? 26 a game, 9 assists, 130 offensive ratings, looking like the Dame of old. Middleton is back. So we like that in terms of being able to push Boston a little bit, right? And not just let them coast here with a lower scoring win. Although if they coast and they blow them out, they're probably going to score 120 plus. So it's a good way to cover multiple scenarios in this one. Instead, I'll go under at Detroit here. Indy is at Detroit, and it's 235, which is just a really high total for this new look Indiana Pacers team. I mean, in general, on the road, they've been going under for months. Actually, 15 of 19 on the road have gone under, 10 of 13 overall since the All-Star break. And it's just a different team in terms of Halliburton not like pushing the pace as much in terms of, having Siakam in there instead of Bruce Brown, all sorts. They just lost Mathurin, who, clearly has been missed in these last few for them. They are actually the worst 3-point shooting team in terms of makes and second worst in 3-point percentage on the road since the All-Star break. So very much missing Benny Matz there. They depend on getting to the rim, paint points, 2-point field goals, but they're still like 10th in offensive rating on these road games, 15th in effective field goal percentage. Pistons have, they're pretty stout down low. They've shown some fight defensively. I mean, part of this is just who they've played lately, but their last four at home, 102.7 defensive rating, number 9 defensive rating overall. Their last 8 at home. And, middle of the pack paint points, but limiting fast break and second chance points. Jalen Duren doing a fantastic job rebounding the ball. And then, I mean, you just don't trust their offense, really. I know they've had some spike games where they've suddenly scored 120 plus, but with Fontecchio potentially going to miss the second game here, with Cade coming back from what was just like a rest day, it seems. I still don't think there's anything about this Pistons offense to say like, oh, this is shootout potential here. I mean, they're averaging 107 since the All-Star break. They've slowed it down to a 94 pace in their last 3. And they have been also one of the worst 3-point shooting teams, 4th worst since the All-Star break. And Indy is actually allowing the fewest 3-point attempts right now. So that's the fact that they've struggled in terms of percentage against a team like the Pistons, not going to be an issue. I'm just going to ride this trend here with the Pacers going under, which has happened pretty consistently.
It has, yeah. Road game a little bit more likely here. I would concur with that for this Pacers team. The thing is, they're both playing at such a fast pace, but yeah, without a few guys in there, if that's the case, then I think that. Look, the new look Pacers, they've got me in a little bit of a conundrum because that 3-point percentage is so weird, like you're saying. So it's weird to like understand what's going on there. Halliburton was hurt a little bit, but at the same time, like they're not getting out in transition as much. You've got a lot more Obi Toppin in there and Pascal in there than you ever had, right? And so yeah, there's going to be fewer threes going up, and things might just be slowing down a bit because of that. And on the road, that defense is something that they do rely on a little bit more, like you're saying. So. Let me close it out here with the Clips and the Trailblazers. And I mean, look, the Trailblazers have some good cover spots here. I'm going to take this as one of them. The Clippers have been struggling. Like, who feels comfortable betting on the Clippers moving into the playoffs? It's like a 2-3 week period where we were just like, oh my God, the Clippers. It was like, yeah, it's January. Let's figure this out a little bit more. It's December. And now we've just seen them kind of like just wallowing. I mean, in their last 5, they're 1-4 straight up and against the spread. They do have the 6th hardest strength of schedule in that time. They played some pretty good teams, but their only win is beating Chicago by 15. Not a good look. And they've lost to some of those Western Conference teams as well. And Portland just covered at Chicago, by the way, and almost beat them, was on the verge of beating them there and lost by 3. So I don't know what you do with the Bulls right now. That not a great win for the Clippers by any means. So I'm not going to put too much stock into that. They do have the 10th best effective field goal percentage. Portland has been playing defense, 11th best defensive effective field goal percentage over their last 5 games as well. They've been really good at defending the mid-range pretty much for the season. That's where their strength of their defense is. It would be nice if Matisse Thybulle was playing. He'd be a good defensive matchup for them against Kawhi and PG. He's questionable, but either way, I mean, even if those two dudes kind of go off, which they just did in a loss that they took, then as long as Portland can still sort of hang on offense, and look, we need DeAndre Ayton to be the crazy dominating that he's been. Basically, like, he's on a crazy tear, right? Like with his points and rebounds and everything, he might be a good look for tonight as well as someone that they rely on. When Scoot Henderson has been in there and he's going to be playing a bunch more, then it does unlock Ayton a bit more as well, alongside Simons, 2 guards that can get him the ball. But mostly he's just been hitting everything and getting a ton of rebounds and second chance points. So I still think he's going to be liable to do all that stuff. Finishing the point about the Clippers, though, they're 5th in field goal percentage of their shots that they're taking from 3 over the last 5 as well, and basically the last 10 games. Portland is a great 3-point defense. We've talked about that as well consistently throughout the season. There's a few things that they do really well. One of them is limiting that 3. And if Norm Powell is not a go in this one, then the bench for the Clippers is really not going to be much of an advantage for them. Trey Mann, I believe, is also questionable. That would be a huge problem for them to lose he and Norman Powell at that point. Now you really have nobody coming off the bench. I mean, Trey Mann's been starting, but he's also gotten some minutes with that second unit. unit. And now it's going to be a lot of James Harden, which also leads me to go under in this game. Harden has been the guy who's slowed down this Clippers offense a ton. Wants to play in the half court. We know that. So that's going to be a huge reasoning for that. But, Portland in their last 5, they played a harder schedule than this Clippers team. And they're actually 3-2 against the spread. Granted, they're coming in as like plus double-digit dogs rather than favorites in any of these 5 games, but they have covered. Like I said, in 3 of these 5, including that Chicago one I talked about, the 2 games they got smoked are by 2 of the best teams in the league right now, between the Celtics, best team in the East, and the Pellies, second best team in the West, maybe. They look really, really good right now. So that's not a terrible loss for this Portland Trailblazers team either. The fast break points, I think, and the second chance points should be there for Portland. They are getting a few more fast break points. They're not getting out in transition as often, but the total points off the fast break, if the Clippers, basically, in summation, if the Clippers are going to be a jump shooting team that don't go to the rim, they're playing right into the hands of exactly what Portland wants to do, which is being good at defending jump shooters, not very good at defending the rim, and then getting out in transition off those long rebounds if they get them off those misses. So if that's exactly how Kawhi and PG want to play this, as jump shooting, to make this team a jump shooting team, then I think that's fine for the Blazers. They can cover the 12.5 points here.
Yeah, I mean, Norman Powell potentially being out makes me love the under as well as the Blazers here. I'm surprised that this total is actually creeping up, I guess, just because of recent history between the teams. It's Terrence Mann. You said Trey Mann twice, but I mean, I know your man's.
I know my man's.
Who's questionable as well. I don't know how to feel about that in terms of the total. I mean, he's not a great offensive player, but if the Clippers are missing both those guys and Westbrook, we know is out, like the second unit between these two is just going to be like absolute slugfest, gross, low scoring. Like, who's going to put the ball in the basket here? I mean, Bones Highland might. But otherwise, yeah, I don't see the Clippers. Like the pace has been around 92 for both of these teams recently in these matchups. So I initially was looking at the under here. And if it's an under, it's going to be very hard to cover 12 points. Like, this is a pretty insane spread given how bad the Clippers have been lately.
100%. And yeah, I mean, the thing about the Bones Highland stuff is he's the only one that kind of ruins the under for you as someone who doesn't play defense and plays very fast for them. But if he's in there with the second unit, let me put it this way. If Terrence Mann is not in and Norman Powell's not in, now you're looking at Bones Highland probably in the starting lineup right alongside James Harden, which will slow Bones down a bit. And then, yeah, you still got that second unit that is going to be nasty, not good nasty. It's going to be an ugly battle, and maybe some live betting opportunities there as well. If you want to take an under, if you see a high scoring first quarter, wait for those subs to come in, and then you'll get a much lower scoring second quarter would be the way I'd look at that. So that's all the time we have for you in this one. Continue to follow along. Check out the other video we have up for you each and every day, weekday, with those play-up props that we've got. So until we see you next, happy betting.